WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. My next guest, he does it all. He is the play-by-play voice of the Brooklyn Nets and does the NCAA tournament on CBS and Dial Global Radio, and that is Iron Eagle Bird. Zach Gelb here. How are you?
Hey, Zach. Good to talk to you again.
Well, it's great to talk to you. And a little birdie actually told me some few rumors the last few days. Jay-Z is now representing Robinson Cano, and Jay-Z is a minority owner with the Brooklyn Nets, and I'm sure you see him a bunch of times throughout the course of the season. Is it true that you're signing on board with Jay-Z and he's going to be your new agent?
Well, I don't know if many people know this. They should. My actual stage name is MC INE. So I guess I give you the exclusive. This is the coming out party. Yes, everything you asked. Yes.
And I also read a nice article about you this week that you do Bill Raftery, that you could definitely do an impersonation of him.
Yeah, there was a stretch when I was working with Bill that he was crisscrossing around the country doing college games, doing net games, and there were a couple of games where he cut it tight. You know, getting a late flight was delayed, and there was talk that, if necessary, I could have done both roles. My own role, play-by-play, and the color commentary role as Bill Raftery. Oh, I could just break into it at any point, and I just would have been able to draw 2 paychecks. To me, that would have been the bonus.
Well, we all know Raft is very diligent in this industry, and I'm surprised he even has enough voice to speak down there at the Final Four this weekend, as he does a bunch of the games for the NCAA tournament. But from my understanding, you were actually there for the start of Onions, which is one of my favorite call in sports, so give me that story.
Yeah, that story was way back when my first year doing Nets on TV, and a big shot by, I believe it was Kevin Edwards in the corner. And he said, after the big shot late in the fourth quarter, onions. And, you know, I normally was very, very good at the RAF to English translation. And we go to break, and I turned to him, I said, onions, what? What is that? It's so good it makes you cry? And he said, no, Bird. And then he told me what it was, which is a part of the male anatomy, not to get into graphic details, but a pair of big you-know-what. And from
I
there,
got you.
I think you get it. From there, the call just continued to grow in terms of myth and epic proportions.
So many people careers that you get started there, Ryan, as Iron Eagle joins us, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. And it's very interesting because you have the Final Four this weekend, but the big story right now in college basketball, if you were to turn on ESPN, if you were listening to the radio stations, has been everything that's happened over there in Rutgers with Mike Rice being fired, reaction to the head coach being fired.
Well, I think what often happens is when something goes outside the sphere of what the intended use is, in this case, college basketball, once it goes public and outside of the normal context, it usually means it's going to end badly. And that's what happened here. People around the program had known this had happened until you see video of it. Maybe you have a visual in your head what could have happened. Eric Murdoch, a former Net, former NBA player, clearly had an axe to grind of some sort after being let go. I don't know if there was talk prior to that. If Eric stayed on, that this video never would have become public. You know, there are a couple of sides to this story. The first part of it is what Mike Rice did was uncalled for, unacceptable, and that's why he's no longer employed by Rutgers. The second part is, how did we get to this point? And there were people that knew things well before. We're talking about in excess of a year ago. So I think you'll see this story in stages now over the next few days. And the follow-up stories are going to start to try to get to the bottom of exactly how it got to that point. But really unfortunate situation. I don't know Mike personally. I know people that know him. I know people that would vouch for him and say he's a good guy. But the tape doesn't lie. And you just can't have that in not only college athletics, in athletics in general.
He definitely did not look like he was on the right end of things, and it was firing him I thought was the right move. And I actually believe it should have happened when they gave him the 3-game suspension, and now a plethora of people are giving Pernetti and the president of the university a lot of heat. Do you think the AD and the president survived this whole debacle?
I don't know. I think there's a very good chance that either one or both could lose their job. Tim Pernetti, I do know, and I have a lot of respect for. I like him as a person. I've known him for a long time. I think he may have been under the impression that the 3-game suspension would be enough, and this tape would never actually come to light. But to me, that's the bigger issue. I think there's a secondary story here. They were trying to avoid this ever becoming public. And look, there are a lot of things that happen. A lot of us are not naive, and we know that things go on in all walks of life that we'd rather not know about. But they happen, and when they're aired in dirty laundry fashion in a very public way, especially in the day and age that we live in now, where one click of the button you can send that video to everybody you know, and they tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends. It's just a different world that we live in. Those things happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It doesn't make it right. But I will tell you that there are many coaches out there right now that are hoping that this didn't open up a Pandora's box. Because if you want to go talk to former disgruntled players of coaches, you're going to get a wide variety of opinions from those players that weren't happy with the way that they were treated, weren't happy with their playing time, weren't happy with the way that they were berated publicly in front of their teammates. So it does open up a very large scope of topics that I wonder where we're headed on this subject. This is certainly not the only incident that's taken place in college athletics. It's the one that happened to have video behind it, and it's the one that everybody's talking about right now.
One of the best in the business, Ian Eagle, joins us on the hotline. Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. Zach Gelb here with you for Temple Sports Hour. And Ian, your school is Syracuse, your team is Syracuse, and they're on their way to the Final Four and hopefully a championship game for your sake. You got to be pretty exuberant about this team and their chances this weekend.
Yeah, Zach, I think in sports, what you learn over time is the unexpected storylines are normally the most enjoyable ones. The ones where you're supposed to win this, you're supposed to do that. A lot of times those are unfulfilling. But 3 weeks ago, I don't think there's anybody that could have predicted this team would go on this kind of run. They did not end the regular season in strong fashion. They really struggled offensively. A lot of questions swirling about the program, and they were able to flip the switch in the Big East tournament. They lose to Louisville in the championship game. We know now that that's certainly nothing to be ashamed about because Louisville's the best team in the country. And in this NCAA tournament, they have put on an absolute clinic defensively. That 2-3 zone that anybody can run. I mean, that's not an uncommon thing in college basketball. It's just that Jim Boeheim has the perfect players for this zone this year. These guys have bought in. They're long. They fit what he likes to do. It's a 2-3 zone that can provide you with man-to-man principles, and it's amoeba-like. John Thompson, my broadcast partner this past weekend, the former Georgetown coach, and I know it killed him to have to watch Syracuse cut down the nets in Washington, D.C., but he talked about the zone being an amoeba, that it wasn't locked into one spot on the floor or one area. It can move, and with that, there's some combinations within that zone if you get creative. And these players are just playing it to a T. So this is not a great matchup for Syracuse, I'll tell you that. If they had their druthers, they would rather have played Florida with the smallish backcourt, with a team that likes to push it, similar to Indiana. Michigan has developed very quickly. McGarry has become a huge factor, and they've got some variety. They have versatility on their roster, and they have guys that can shoot the three. So that's going to pose a major challenge for Boeheim and company.
It's the marquee matchup of the weekend. It's offense going up against defense, but I look at Boeheim. He's been there for 37 years. He's won a national championship back in 2003. He has over 900-plus wins. He's only getting older. Let's just say come Monday night, he's cutting down the nets and he's a champion. Can you see Jim Boeheim walking away and calling this his final run?
No, I really can't. I think Jim Boeheim is a lifer. I don't think he has many other interests outside of this, and if he does, he believes he can balance it in his life, playing golf a little bit, playing with his kids a little bit. But I think this is what he loves to do. I would be shocked, even if they won the title, even if they're up there on the ladder cutting down the nets on Monday night. I don't think Jim Boeheim is looking at this like Ted Williams, that he has to go out on top. It would be another feather in his cap, but I don't believe that's going to be the determining factor on whether or not he's coming back. And if you're asking me whether or not he's coming back, I would tell you I think he'll be back next year, and I think he'll be back the year after that.
I saw this Syracuse team play up against the Temple Owls, and the Owls did defeat your Orange this year when Syracuse was red hot and they were undefeated. And the one player that I left the building that day saying he's going to be a stud and he's been remarkable this year has been Michael Carter-Williams, and he could really just kill you on all ends of the basketball, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think there's been a maturity there from him that they needed to see, and it's really taken place, the metamorphosis during this NCAA tournament of him making the right decisions, not making mistakes on the offensive end. Look at his turnovers numbers. It's incredible what he's been able to do. And it's funny, he doesn't have off-the-charts athleticism or off-the-charts speed, but because of his frame, because of his long strides, because of his ability to cross over and create angles, he finds a way to get to the rim. He's not overly strong. He's, in fact, very skinny. We talked about the quickness and the athleticism. It's not going to compare to some other guys that are part of college basketball right now. But you put the whole package together, and he has a knack. He's grown up in a hurry. A year ago, keep in mind, he was really not a factor on this team. He was a bench player that didn't see a whole lot of time playing behind the likes of Scoop Jardine and Chris Joseph and Dion Waiters. And there were thoughts that he might transfer. He was unhappy, but he was able to stick it out, and now here he is with a chance to really make a name for himself and win an NCAA championship.
Final one here, because I know you got to run. Ian Eagle joins us. Zach Gelb here with you. Pitino is back in the Final Four, has another chance to get to a championship game and win it. Wichita State has been a Cinderella story of this tournament. Do they at all have a chance? And then after that, the next question would be, who do you see in the championship game and who wins it all?
No, I don't believe Wichita State can win the game. I know that's making a pretty heavy statement for a team that's looked so impressive during this run. I'm really not saying it to take anything away from the Shockers. I'm saying it based on the fact that I just think Louisville is a special team that can play Rick Pitino's system to a T. They're fast at the guard position. They're really long on the back line. Normally with Pitino teams, you see great defensive teams that may struggle on offense. That we've seen in recent years. That's not the case with this team. They can score, and they can score in a variety of ways with Russ Smith leading the way offensively, Porgy Chang, one of the most improved offensive players in the country. So taking nothing away from Greg Marshall and the job he's done at Wichita State, I just think he's running into a buzzsaw. Syracuse, Michigan, Zach, perfectly honest, I really think it's a toss-up. I think if Michigan shoots the ball well, if they're making shots from three, they can loosen that Syracuse zone, then it will be Michigan in the championship game. If they're not hitting their shots from the perimeter, that'll be a bigger challenge for them. McGarry has been extraordinary in this tournament, but Syracuse can mix and match up front. They've got enough big bodies and long players to go up against McGarry in the middle. It's going to come down to shots. If Michigan is making threes, they win. If they're not, then Syracuse will play for a national championship. I think either team will have a tough time with Louisville. I just think it's a team on a mission. Obviously, the Kevin Ware situation, maybe even adding more fuel to them right now. Not that they needed any more incentive, but the idea of winning for him and making this a historic run and a memorable one is something that is clearly on their minds right now.
Before you run, if you just do this for me, you don't have to send me a holiday card this year. Can you just say onions one more time?
Oh, onions!
That's why you're the best, Ian. Thanks so much. I appreciate the time. Best of luck this weekend. We appreciate it, my friend.
All right, I got to get myself a Ricola after that one.